I already hit the button to start, so it'll leap here in a second.
I think we're already live, buddy.
Yeah, well, I know. Hello, everybody. My name is Dan Skipbound, and this is the Top 5 Weekly. This week, in honor of The Mummy coming out, we're going to be doing Tom Cruise movies. And with me, as always, well, lately they've been off and on. 1 week they'd be on, 1 week they'd be off. They've been sick or been busy, or our schedules haven't really worked out that good. But Andrew and Steven are back. They really are excited about talking about Tom Cruise movies, as anybody could be about talking about Tom Cruise movies. So, starting with Andrew, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew, back here once again. Glad that we have the original group back here, me, Steven, and Dan. It's kind of the founding fathers of Top 5 Weekly. But yeah, we're talking Tom Cruise this week in honor of The Mummy. It's going to be interesting. Tom Cruise has a really long filmography, so this was a tough top 5 to make. We could have done a top 10. Man, we could have done a top 20 for all we know. But yeah, Tom Cruise, it's going to be an interesting list.
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. You hit the nail on the head. All right, and Steven, once again, back with us this week.
Yes, sorry I couldn't be here every week. So now my standings as being on here the most has dropped a little bit. So I've missed a couple. I think I'm tied with Dan now, with the amount of shows I've missed. But yeah, Tom Cruise, man, it's kind of like how I feel about Will Smith, or not Will Smith, but like Nicolas Cage. I have this love for they're just crazy people, but you love them. And Tom Cruise to me is an underrated actor. But we'll get into this. Let's do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Show me the money. Show me the money. Let's do it.
Show me the money. Oh, that's what I could use right now. Someone to show me some money, because I'm broke. But that's a whole other story. So let's get into it. Hot and heavy. Tom Cruise movies. We've been planning this one for quite a while, ever since we knew The Mummy was coming out this week. So this week we're going to start with Steven. Steven, welcome back. You get to start first.
Hell yeah. My number 5 is this one is one that I find to be maybe arguably his best performance in any film, and that is 1989's Born on the 4th of July. This one's directed by Oliver Stone. Controversial directors, not one of my favorites, but out of all the movies he's done, I feel like that this is one of the most neutral point of view type of films that he's done. You got Tom Cruise playing this veteran of Vietnam who gets paralyzed and comes back from the war and becomes just a war activist and for human rights, and really just it's based on a true story, and it's the book that this movie's based on was written by the actual guy. So it's very truthful, very much there, all there. And Tom Cruise just gives one of these probably the most powerful performance he's ever given. Just watch the one scene. It's called "Thou Shalt Not Kill," I think is the name of the scene. It's a powerful scene where his parents are trying to deal with him, and he's just drunk, and he's just throwing out all this just rage and then it's famous for him saying penis a bunch of times in it, which is really funny. But it's just such a remarkable performance. It really is. And it'll make you look at Tom Cruise in a whole different way, because he's just really great in this movie. And the movie is just a powerful movie, and it's one of my most favorite biography Vietnam War type of films. So Born on the 4th of July is my number 5.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Steven. All right, Andrew, what's your number 4? Number 5. Number 5.
Yeah, my number 5 is probably higher on most people's lists. But, I mean, with a filmography like Tom Cruise's, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be lower when they probably should be higher. That's just the way it is. But my number 5 is Collateral, which is a bit of a different role for him. I'm sure many of you have seen Collateral. If you haven't, it is a fantastic film by Michael Mann. Came out in 2004. starring Jamie Foxx as well as, of course, Tom Cruise. And in this film, Tom Cruise plays a bad guy. He plays a hitman, if you will, and it's kind of just him going around and killing people. And it's a really different role than Tom Cruise, I think, really has ever played, and really he hasn't played quite a role like that since. He's always the leading man, the hero, the good guy, the protagonist. But in this film, he plays the bad guy, and he does it extremely well, like shockingly well. It really shows kind of the extent to which Tom Cruise's talent really is. Where he can do a bunch of different things in a bunch of different roles.
Yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. My number 5 is a movie where somebody else in the film got a lot of credit for their performance, but I feel like without the performance of Tom Cruise as Charlie in the film, he plays Charlie Babbitt opposite Dustin Hoffman's. I got it right here. Dustin Hoffman's Raymond Babbitt. I think they're like a yin and a yang in that film. In the 1988's Rain Man, directed by Barry Levinson. This movie went on to win Best Picture and Best Actor Oscar for Dustin Hoffman. But I think the real like heart of the film, who carries the film, gets the film from the beginning of the film to the end of the film, and is Tom Cruise, and he has to really have a lot of emotional scenes opposite Dustin Hoffman. So a lot of folks don't really consider this one of his best roles, but because of the performance by Dustin Hoffman in this film. But really, this is one of his earlier roles where he really showed that he wasn't like Maverick in Top Gun. He wasn't like the character in Legend where he was just kind of like he wasn't this young up and coming actor in Risky Business or Taps or anything. He was here to stay, and he was going to perform and show people that he can hang with the heavyweights like Dustin Hoffman. And Dustin Hoffman at that time was an absolute heavyweight in Hollywood. He had already won Oscars previously to that, and he had so many great iconic roles leading up to Rain Man. So I had Charlie Babbitt in Rain Man as my number 5. All right, so let's go back to Steven. And what is your number 4?
My number 4 is one that I wanted to do one of his Mission Impossible. I can't speak, guys. Mission Impossible films, and I really like almost all of them. Besides the second one's not really that great, but all the other ones I really like. But I wanted my favorite out of the series, and this might be a little bit controversial. Some people might agree with me or not, but I go with Mission Impossible 3. Mission Impossible 3 for me was really where the franchise got rejuvenated. You had J.J. Abrams come in and direct. It was his first film, and you have the best bad guy in the series by far, I feel like, which is played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. And it's just a very intense movie. I mean, it starts off with guys having bombs in these people with bombs in their heads, and then and you have Michelle Monaghan plays Tom Cruise's wife. She gets kidnapped at one point in the movie, and it's a very intense movie. Out of all the Mission Impossible films, it really to me was the most intense. And J.J. Abrams' action direction is always really good. He really gets it, and Tom Cruise just puts on a great performance once again for me. In this film, playing with Philip Seymour Hoffman, it's just really good. You get the first appearance of Simon Pegg in this series in the third film, and it's just a really great action spy movie. It's my favorite in the series. I always go back and forth between that one and Ghost Protocol, but it's really good. And I think if you haven't seen Mission Impossible 3, you should check it out.
Yeah, that's really a character study, really, that Mission Impossible 3 is. It really, with the problems with our government and some of the stuff that was going on, it started showing you the things that can go on in government and the kinds of things, the disgruntled people that can go on, and how our government and whatnot, it's all splintered into all these different factions and stuff like that. And Mission Impossible really shows us kind of little ins and outs of our government, even though it's all fictional, you know? So, yeah, definitely. That's the franchise Viagra, Stephen. Franchise Viagra. That's J.J. Abrams. All right, Andrew, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is another pick that's probably higher on most people's lists. And it is more of an ensemble film. And that is Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia. If you're familiar with this film, if you're familiar with PTA in general, his films definitely are more ensemble pieces, maybe except for There Will Be Blood. But in this film, Tom Cruise plays a character who's kind of a male motivational speaker, if you will. He's more about kind of consulting men on their sexual lives. And he's really misogynistic. He's really over the top. But there's also a lot of dramatic kind of undertone that is revealed throughout the film about him and about his character. And I think it's one of his best roles. And it really is just a phenomenal role in a film filled with phenomenal performances. So I'm going to go with that at my number 4. And I highly recommend people watching Magnolia. It's a long movie, but it is an amazing movie in my opinion. It's one of PTA's best amongst a really strong filmography from him. And it's another one of those Tom Cruise performances that is really unexpected. It's kind of unlike anything that he's done. It's really unique. I can't quite explain it. I know Steven is a big fan of this role as well.
I'm sure a lot of folks are out there. I remember one group I was in a while back, and there was this guy. The only movie he ever talked about in the group was Magnolia. Like, dude, don't you know how to talk about any other movie? But no, Magnolia is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
I mean, I like the movie, but greatest thing since sliced bread.
This guy was like, he was crazy about Magnolia for some reason. I'll tell you what, my number 4 is a little movie that a lot of folks, once again, go back to the acting chops of Tom Cruise, where people think, oh, he's this action star. He does all these explosion movies and these super stunts and all this stuff. Well, this is a little movie where it's a little small movie. It's not a big movie. It's about the assassination of Adolf Hitler. It's called Valkyrie, and it's directed by Bryan Singer. And Tom Cruise plays a guy by the name of Colonel von Stauffenberg. Yeah, wasn't that a great name? Colonel von, I got the name, I wrote it down. Klaus von Stauffenberg is the guy's name. And what a great name. It came out in 2008, and it's about the assassination. This is a little story about this film. Tom Cruise saw a photo of this guy, and he was so enamored with the guy because he looked like himself. He literally looked like Tom Cruise. And so Tom Cruise is like, whoa, I want to get this movie made. And then he read up on it. He heard about all the stuff that went on. I mean, and it was a really fascinating story about the assassination, one of the assassinations of Adolf Hitler, by some of these Nazi officers and stuff. And it's got some great scenes where he's preparing to put this bomb, and he had to do this and he had to do that, and he had to time it all, and you had to open this door, you had to drive over here, this guy had to open that. It was so crazy how every little thing in this film had to go into place for them to complete this assassination of Adolf Hitler. And I'm not going to spoil the film if you have not seen it, but there are no German accents in this film. They're playing it as Americans, English people playing, or Brits playing it. So if you're looking for a bunch of people speaking German, well, that's not in this film. And Tom Cruise isn't speaking German. So it's an American film about this story that took place in Nazi Germany. But I really recommend it. And it's really good to see Tom Cruise doing something different. He does so many of the similar kinds of things. And this is something different for him that I didn't expect, and I really liked it. And Bryan Singer, it's one of his better films, in my opinion, on his filmography as well. So I had Valkyrie at number 4. All right. So since we're celebrating this week, we're talking about Tom Cruise because of The Mummy. Let's get into it. Steven, I'm sure, did everybody on the panel see The Mummy? Yes? Okay. So, Stephen, it's your turn to just, I know you do a rapid reaction and so forth, but just share with us a little bit of your thoughts aside from your rapid reactions.
Well, just really quick. Yes, I saw The Mummy the other night, and going into it, I already kind of seen the very negative reactions people were giving it. It's like downwards of 20% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, of course, going into it, very low expectations. But that's kind of how I go into most movies. I don't try to hype myself very much anymore, because that's what kills movies for a lot of people, is when you hype yourself up too much. The closest I get to it is Star Wars. Star Wars, I always hype myself up a little bit before. Can't help it. But with The Mummy, I actually came out of the film enjoying myself. I actually really enjoyed myself. I think all the things that people are having problems with, sure, they're I get it. You know, it's not a very in-depth film. The characters are not very deep. It's very formulaic in the sense of, it kind of rips off other versions of The Mummy a little bit. But if you think about it, story, they're wanting to make a cinematic universe about these characters. And honestly, at the root of it, these characters have very simple movies themselves. So you can only do so much when it comes to trying to upgrade this to a mainstream audience and make a universe out of it. These characters, as deep as some of them are more deeper than others. The Mummy, you don't get too deep with The Mummy. So, and people always say, I watch these movies for the monsters and not the people around them, kind of like Transformers. So I guess they kind of went with that, and you didn't get very deep human characters, and then you complain about it. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but I really enjoyed it myself. I thought the mythology was setting up something really cool for the rest of this universe. That can be a downfall for a lot of people that say, hey, it needs to be its own movie. I get that, but I still had fun with it. I came out enjoying it. I don't mind seeing it again. I gave it a decent rating, so.
Yeah, I saw you gave it a B+5. That's a very good rating.
Basically, I gave it a good entertainment value grade, but I know that technically it's not great.
Yeah. And Andrew?
Yeah. I'm a little along the lines of Steven, but I'm a little less enthusiastic about the film than him. I think the film is fine. It's an okay film. It's got some good things, some bad things. The overall positives of it is entertaining from kind of an action adventure film type standpoint. I mean, you have Tom Cruise, who is this kind of action adventure star, and he's kind of the head of this plot. He's kind of leading us along on this journey, on this fight against the mummy, if you will. And the most negative aspects I have with the film is that I feel that it is just an utterly average film overall. The screenplay for me particularly was kind of all over the place. It didn't help the fact that there was like 6 people who worked on this screenplay / story, which is like, wow, that is an exorbitant amount of people, especially if you're trying to start this thing out really strong and have a vision. You don't want 6 people's visions. You kind of want like 1 or 2 at the most. And there was a lot of just kind of generic action film stuff. It's not a bad film for me. I know some people say, oh, it's terrible. I saw one article headline where it's like, it's the worst film that Tom Cruise has ever done, and I'm like, that's not true. I don't think that's true at all. One of the main things, like Steven said, is that I like that it establishes the mythology. My favorite portions of the film was kind of the foundational stuff for this dark universe that Universal's trying to start, where you see that there is a lot more going on in this world than just the mummy. There are other things that are going bump in the night. I really liked Russell Crowe in this movie. For me, I think he was a bit of a highlight. His acting, I thought, was really good in a movie that just had overall average acting. I thought his was really above board, and I also really like his character. And I'm really curious to see where they go with his character going forward. But overall, I say check it out. If you're a fan of the Brendan Fraser Mummy or the original Mummy from the classic Universal Monsters, definitely temper your expectations. This film is not those films. Although it takes a lot from that Brendan Fraser Mummy in terms of trying to be a comedy action adventure, it's not quite the same funness. But granted, that film has had, 18 years worth of time to endear its audience when we're just seeing this now for the first time. I mean, hopefully they do make more films in this world because I like their overall foundational vision that they're going with. I want to see them build off of it.
All right, that's good. Yeah, I'll tell you what. I did come into this movie with expectations. We've talked about it before. I was a huge fan of the Universal monsters growing up as a kid. Dracula and Frankenstein and the Wolfman and the Invisible Man. And these movies were my childhood. I watched them religiously growing up. So when I heard that they were going to make a Universal Monsters cinematic universe, and not till recently did they call it the Dark Universe, I was so through the moon. I was like over the moon and then this film, Alex Kurtzman, we hear that Alex Kurtzman is going to shepherd this, and Alex Kurtzman is a guy that I believe in, a guy that he's worked with Star Trek, he's worked with other things, and I thought, well, this is the guy that I think that I can believe in, who can shepherd this kind of universe. And he was going to direct the first one, and obviously Andrew's right. There was 4 or 5 writers on the movie, so they must have had to tinker with the script. And listening to interviews with Alex Kurtzman, he talked about some of the changes and some of the things that they did. But when you add Tom Cruise to any movie, it's a plus for me. 9 out of 10 times I enjoy Tom Cruise movies. There's a few that I did not enjoy, but with the expectations of this is a Universal Monsters movie, you add Tom Cruise in there, you have the Mummy, Sophia Boutella, who right now, in my opinion, is 3 for 3. Whether you like this movie, you don't like, she is 3 for 3 in her performances as the Mummy in this, her character in Secret Service, and her character in Star Trek Beyond. I mean, and then we got Atomic Blonde coming out in another month with her. This girl so far, and she doesn't have a lot of speaking lines, so she's good with the action. She's good at inhabiting these characters and not having a whole lot of dialogue, and that really works for Sophia Boutella. So I really enjoyed her as the monster. There's a scene in the movie where there's like 2 things going on at once. One scene involving the Mummy and one scene involving Russell Crowe and Tom Cruise. And these 2 scenes were going on simultaneously at the same time. And I really was invested in the story, invested in the movie, invested in the characters at that point in the movie. And what Steven says, I thought this was a fun movie. I mean, they weren't really trying to take themselves seriously. It was a fun monster movie. They're going to try to set up some other movies. And I didn't think they were doing that more so than just being the movie that they were in right then and there with Tom Cruise and Sophia Boutella and Jake Johnson and Annabelle Wallis. I thought the movie itself was contained enough to where I could enjoy the movie for itself, not worry about what they were trying to do with setting up other films. I don't know how other people could see that. I mean, I know they have little things on shelves and whatnot like that, but this movie is self-contained in and of itself. And it's fun. It's fun for what it is. The action scenes, there's a plane scene, then there's a scene with a truck in the woods that are phenomenal scenes. And I don't know how you can't enjoy this film. I did enjoy. I really did enjoy The Mummy. Sometimes you're just going to take your brain out of your head, put it on the side, and say, I'm going to go into a movie and just have fun. And that's what I did with The Mummy. And my expectations were just as much as I ended up enjoying it is what went into it. So I like this film, and I hope it makes a lot of money because I want to see The Bride of Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, The Werewolf, and all these other movies that they're talking about making. Because I'm just like so excited for this whole entire dark universe. But let's get back to talking about Tom Cruise's other performances. And Steven, you are up next with number 3.
3. Okay. My number 3 is one we've talked about on another episode, I'm pretty sure. It's kind of one of the main kind of iconic roles for Mr. Tom Cruise, and that is Jerry Maguire. Jerry Maguire is just Cameron Crowe You got Tom Cruise playing a sports agent, kind of a douche at the beginning, and he learns to become a good man through a woman, falls in love, unintentionally, basically, but he falls in love. And, you also, of course, have Cuba Gooding Jr. In his Oscar winning role as a football player that he is being represented by Tom Cruise character. And it's just one of his most charismatic roles. Really shows the Tom Cruise in this movie. Has some of the most iconic lines. He's got like 3 lines in this one movie. Hello, you complete me, and show me the money. 3 movie lines that are in the top movie lines of all time. And I can't say much more. There might be somebody else has it on their list, but it's one of my favorites. And Cameron Crowe is one of my favorite directors. He finds a way to get humor, heart. His soundtracks are always really good. Great film, Jerry Maguire.
No, I understand where you're coming from, Stephen. A lot of folks like that film, and it's obviously transcended time. Andrew, what's yours, number 3?
My number 3 is probably a controversial pick, if you will. It's a divisive film. It's not one of Tom Cruise's most popular films, but it's not really a popular film in general, but it's a film that I really think is fantastic, and I think is just incredible. And that is the late, great Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. Say what you want out there. I love this movie. It is dark. It is visceral. It is introspective. It's existential. It's a fever dream at times. Its themes are really bold, really sexual, really just incredible. It's a film that was Stanley Kubrick's last film. It was a film that he worked on for years with Tom Cruise, with Nicole Kidman, and I wanted to talk about it just because I know no one else would, just because, like I said, it is so divisive. I mean, it's such a thick movie, very in depth, very just filled with so many different things that I think a lot of people don't like it for a lot of reasons. It is completely different than, I would say, any other Kubrick film. The one thing with Stanley Kubrick is that all his films were different from one another, which is really kind of cool. I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff that was shared throughout, but each of his films, I think, were unique in their own way. They were all different genres. And in this film, Tom Cruise got to work with Stanley Kubrick, and they became really big friends. There's a lot of like Stanley Kubrick not perspectives, but like special features and things like that, where Tom Cruise talks in depth about his relationship with Stanley Kubrick, what that meant for his career, and just how unique Stanley Kubrick was as a person. So Eyes Wide Shut is one of those films. It was coincidentally the last Stanley Kubrick film I ever watched, and it was the one for me that cemented him as my favorite director of all time. So it has kind of a certain sentimental value for me.
Yeah, and Eyes Wide Shut ruined her marriage as well.
Well, and, I think of probably other things too, but it's a film that's very raw when it comes to relationships between people as well.
Yeah, that whole time in Tom Cruise's life was just such a traumatic and crazy time. You know, I think it was like a 6-year process making Eyes Wide Shut. I could be completely wrong, but and then this whole process really put a strain on the marriage between him and Nicole Kidman. Then he's in this crazy religion called Scientology all throughout this whole life. And then after this, his whole life changed after that, which I'm glad he got away from Stanley Kubrick. He got out of that project and started working with people like Steven Spielberg and people like that later on, because that's when we started getting some better movies again from him.
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick did pass away even before the movie came out, so yeah, he did get it. It was a very interesting time in Tom Cruise's life, the 1990s, because when he made that transition from, 80s kind of young star to adult star, you know what I mean? Like one of those things where you want to take more risk with your career. And I'll say this, Tom Cruise takes a lot of risks throughout his career, and Eyes Wide Shut being one of those risks. Because he's a big star, and he's in this really different movie, you know what I mean?
No, you're absolutely right. I think Eyes Wide Shut is the biggest risk, and I think it was a risk that he today, if he would go back and look, he would regret doing it. He wouldn't do what he did.
I think he'd do it. I still think he'd do it.
Okay, that's fine. That's you're entitled to your opinion on that, Andrew. But all right, my number 3 is a film that Andrew already mentioned. It's called Collateral, where Tom Cruise plays a hitman and a cab driver played by Jamie Foxx named Max. The hitman's name is Vincent, and he gets this cab driver played by Max embroiled into this kind of, like, if you will, like he's got like a list of names he has to go and take care of these guys all in one night, and he has Max, the cab driver played by Jamie Foxx, driving around to all these different places. And it's directed by Michael Mann, and it came out in 2004. I'll tell you what, one of the things I like about Michael Mann films is that you feel like you're in the film, like the film looks real. Like, and when I was watching Collateral, I felt like I was in the movie with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx, like it was real Los Angeles. They were filming this in real streets, real, like the nightlife of Los Angeles, like this. And it's like, wow, man, this looks real. Like I'm actually in this movie. And that's the kind of thing that I really enjoy about Collateral, because you feel like it could be happening right then and there at that moment. Like while you're watching the movie, like this story is going on, or this story went on, actually happened, you know? And that's why I kind of really enjoy. And then as Tom Cruise was a villain, you never got to see. Yeah, he played Interview with the Vampire, where he was kind of a villain, I guess, but he was really a villain. He was a hitman in Collateral, and it is definitely one of his best performances. And this is where Andrew and Stephen were talking about. He's starting to change his career. He's starting to do all these different kinds of roles, and you know, he goes back and does War of the Worlds with Steven Spielberg, but then he does Collateral after that, and that's being very choosy, doing different things. And wow, what a great film! This is one of Michael Mann's and one of Tom Cruise's best films and roles. I really enjoyed Collateral. I could still go back and watch it and enjoy it to this very day. It's one of those great performances by Tom Cruise. All right, let's go back to Stephen with number 2.
Well, speaking of Collateral, my number 2 is Collateral. I actually just watched this movie yesterday. I had a friend over, had not seen this movie, and I was like, "You got to watch this shit. Like, just watch it. It's you don't like Tom Cruise? Watch this movie, because you'll love Tom Cruise after watching this movie, because he's so badass. I mean, that just gray hair that, you know, just it looks like a damn coyote, you know, just like he's wearing this gray suit. He's just badass in this movie. Small cameo by Jason Statham at the very beginning too, which is weird. You know, just shows up, drops off a briefcase, and that's it. And also another tidbit about the movie, the end of the film is the same location as the beginning of Heat. You see the beginning of Heat, it's the same location as the end of Collateral. So it's almost like a universe, the Michael Mann crime universe. But one movie was shot 10 years earlier. But but yeah, Collateral was a fantastic movie. As Dan was saying, it has this really visceral element to it, because you know, Michael Mann likes to use these high def type of cameras that make everything seem a lot more like TV. Like TV uses a lot of the same type of cameras that he uses in his movies. And he's just, you know, Michael Mann's had some kind of bad movies over the last, you know, 10, 15 years, but I would say maybe that Collateral is maybe his best of his most recent films. Yeah, it's Tom Cruise has just got this edginess, this coolness about him that he hadn't really had in any other movies, and he's that likable bad guy. And yeah, I mean, it's a really cool performance by him, and it's one of my favorites. So Collateral, number 2.
Obviously, Collateral is a favorite amongst the panel. All of us, we all had it on our top 5. So it's obviously, you know, this is 3 people from 3 complete different walks of life. They have a film on their top 5, and So obviously it resonated with all of us. So it must be a great film. All right, Andrew, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is a film that is probably very well known for him. Like we just mentioned with Collateral, this is a film that has been quoted many, many times, been probably parodied many, many times, and that is A Few Good Men, directed by Rob Reiner from 1992. And this is a film that has that famous line by Jack Nicholson, "You can't handle the truth." It's really one of the easiest films I find myself constantly rewatching out of all of Tom Cruise's films, just because it's such an engrossing story. For those of you not familiar, basically, Tom Cruise is a military lawyer, and he has to kind of investigate slash prove that someone was killed on this military base. He has to prove that somebody was killed kind of purposely on this military base, or maybe accidentally, but he has to kind of go up against kind of the hierarchy of the military. I believe, I can't remember which branch. I want to say, what were you saying, Dan?
Navy.
The Navy, that's what I thought, the Navy. And he kind of has to go up against the Jack Nicholson character, who is a higher up, who is involved in this in some way. I won't give it away, but there's the wonderful court scene where they go back and forth, and it's just a battle of wills. But what is interesting is you see kind of Tom Cruise's character kind of battle him within himself about the struggles with this case and try to prove certain things and look up certain things. And it's also a really good cast. Like I mentioned, Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, Demi Moore is in it as well. Kevin Bacon is in it as well. Kiefer Sutherland has a little role. I mean, it is a really, really good film. I highly recommend people watching it. Rob Reiner is one of those directors who's not doing very many things now, but back in the 80s and back in the early 90s, he was making his best work.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Rob Reiner really is a great filmmaker, and he's done a lot of different kinds of things. And this is the first time Tom Cruise worked with Cuba Gooding Jr. as well. He's got a small role in the film. So if anybody didn't know, yeah, I mean, obviously, this is when Tom started working with some real heavyweights. Started with Dustin Hoffman, and then he goes on to Jack Nicholson after this, and he works with, so he is starting to carry himself very good in these films at that point, and that's when you started saying, "Uh-oh, here we go. This guy's the real deal. He's one of the best in the business." And he had only been acting good 8-9 years at that time, and obviously now we've been watching his movies for 35 years, and it's whoever thought that back then I grew up watching those movies. I saw A Few Good Men in the theater, and it's like, wow, it seems so not that long ago, but it was so many years ago for me, And you're absolutely right. Jack Nicholson gives, if you don't have the yin to Tom Cruise's yang with the Colonel Jessup character, who knows if he knocks it out of the park like that? You just don't know, And I heard a story that maybe Jack wasn't originally supposed to be in A Few Good Men, and it was like one of those last-minute decisions. So, all right, my number 2 is a little film that Andrew already mentioned called Born on the 4th of July. Ron Kovic, this young kind of kid who's like, he sees all his buddies going into the military. I want to go into the military. And then he goes into the military and gets injured. He has to come back. He's a paraplegic. But he finds more about his life when he leaves the military, and he becomes an anti-war activist. And this is the stuff that he really was meant to do, and fight for other people that are like coming back from Vietnam, and they were like bums on the street, and they weren't getting benefits, and they weren't getting help, and he was petitioning, saying, "Hey, you guys, what are we doing? Why are we doing this stuff? And we need to get our head out of our ass and start thinking about the effect this has on the people that are over there, and why are we over there? What are we doing?" and so forth. And Oliver Stone was in Vietnam, and obviously his movie Platoon is one of the considered one of the greatest war movies of all time. But arguably, I think the real challenge is to try to do a movie about a character who's affected emotionally and physically by the events of Vietnam. And that's what he did with Born on the 4th of July with Ron Kovic. And this is a role that you really can't see Tom Cruise in, but he fought to be in this film. He wanted to be in this film. He wanted to show his range. And this is the first time he was ever nominated for an Oscar. He didn't win, but it starts showing, you start to see, well, here we go. Tom Cruise, he's like this young up-and-coming kind of slick guy in Maverick, and he's like this fast-talking brother in Rain Man, and he's the fast-talking lawyer in A Few Good Men. But look at this. He's this scruffy, wheelchair-bound, kind of long hair, hippie that's really been treated bad, and he wants to try to make things right for a whole group of people and fight against some of the stuff that was going on in the 70s. And Oliver Stone is the perfect director to do that with this book and this character of Ron Kovic. And Tom Cruise elevated his game when he played Ron Kovic. And so that's why I had to have Born on the 4th of July as my number 2, because it's like, I think it's his second best performance he's ever given. And he still hasn't even come close to that, except for one other film. And both films were quite a while ago. So, all right, Stephen, what is your number 1?
Well, this was really tough, but I wanted to go with the one that I felt like is the one that I go back and watch the most. And that is one that Andrew just talked about, and that is A Few Good Men. Few Good Men, movies that I like to put as my number ones a lot of times are movies that really have affected me in my actual, things that have influenced me from movies. And literally there's a scene from this movie that has influenced me in my process of creating, which is the scene where he talks about he needs his bat. He needs his bat, and it's his thinking bat. He can't think well without his bat. I literally do the same thing now. I have a bat that when I'm trying to come up with a good idea for something, I carry it with me because of this movie. I do it just because Tom Cruise did it in this movie. That's how much I've watched this movie and how much it influenced me. And but yes, Tom Cruise, this was really the movie that for me, I mean, yes, you had Rain Man before, you had Born on the 4th of July before. This was maybe one of the first Tom Cruise movies that affected me in the sense of like, this is a good actor. This guy's he's got it. He's going back and forth with Jack Nicholson, who is arguably one of the greatest actors ever. And they're just giving it tit for tat, just back and forth in the courtroom. And just, you even had scenes where, Jack Nicholson's just putting him down right in front of his face, but he's not doing anything about it. And it's just, you can see he wants to just go off on this guy, and he's also playing this character that is kind of in his own way. He's a smart mouth, but he's in the military. He can't be this guy. He's got to have more control. And by the time he gets to the end of the film, he's learned a lot. He's learned a lot about himself and about how, that the things he is doing is important. He's trying to help these people, even though they're not maybe maybe even though what they'd done wasn't great, wasn't a good thing, their intent wasn't bad. And then he had to get these guys off. And it's just a great film, guys. It's maybe it's definitely my top 3 courtroom dramas. It's just fantastic. I might have to watch it when I get off of here because it's one of the movies that you start talking about it, you kind of want to watch it. It's got great scenes in it. And where's my bat? You didn't put my bat in the closet, did you?
That's good. That's good. That was a good one. The thing is too is he really is a slick talker in a lot of his movies. He's that kind of fast talker, and he plays that character so well. But like you said before with Cuba Gooding Jr., he has to have somebody opposite him that can make him go to that next level. And Jack Nicholson really does. And that's one of those movies, like if you see it on like TNT or TBS or AMC or one of these channels, you stop and you watch A Few Good Men. Who doesn't stop and watch A Few Good Men when it's on TV? Not a lot of folks. I mean, I know a lot of folks that will just, oh, I gotta watch that right now. I can't. All right, honey, I'll go cut the lawn another day. I gotta watch A Few Good Men right now. That's one of those movies that you always stop and watch. It kind of glues you to the TV when you see it on. So yeah, no, it's a great show. You guys really had a good choice putting that on your list. I watched it as a kid growing up. I think I was 12 years old. I saw it in theaters, and I loved it when I saw it. All right, so Andrew, what is your number one?
My number one is a film that both of you have already talked about already. Stephen had it as number 5. Dan had it as number 2, and that is Oliver Stone's Born on the 4th of July. This film, I think, is incredible. It is, I don't know if it's my favorite Oliver Stone film, but as you can tell, it is my favorite Tom Cruise film. I think he is just above and beyond any other performance that I think I've seen throughout his career, and he is truly had a career filled with very good performances, but I think this one was his best. I mean, he has such an emotional range in this film because the character of Ron Kovic goes through so much emotional change throughout his life. Like Dan mentioned, initially he's kind of, a young kid from the suburbs, and he wants to serve his country. He wants to do what the previous generations have done. World War II is known as the greatest generation. He wants to be, heroes like they are. And, that's kind of what people are telling young kids at that time to do, join the army, do this, fight for your country, Vietnam, and all this stuff. And he goes there and becomes, like Dan said, a paraplegic. He gets caught in a firefight, and I believe he gets shot by friendly fire. It's that tragic, and I think it's like in his first kind of skirmish, and you see how his kind of mind kind of deteriorates because of this, and you also see that the treatment of the generation of Vietnam veterans is truly awful by not only the United States government, but really by the United States people, by the culture, because they are viewed as kind of the losers of a generation, something like that. It's really a hard film to watch from that perspective. And Oliver Stone is known for doing very politically heavy movies. I mean, he does that now with certain documentaries. He did it with that whole Untold History of the United States. Untold History of the United States documentary that he did. I mean, he's a very politically heavy guy, and in this film, he definitely, I think, does his best to really show a truly human story and not take too much bias, which he tends to have in a lot of his movies. But this film really gets at the heart of this guy and really at the heart of the issues that Oliver Stone wants to kind of show about the generation of Vietnam, because like Dan said, he was in Vietnam. He did fight in Vietnam. So it's something that he has touched on several times in his career, including Platoon, which is probably his most well-known film. But yeah, this is the performance by Tom Cruise that I think everyone should watch. If you are not a fan of Tom Cruise, if you know someone who's not a fan of Tom Cruise because they have this image of this kind of, this pretty boy, grinning leading man, show them this movie, because this movie is really the extent of how great Tom Cruise can be as an actor.
It really is. I mean, if I didn't have this other film as my number one, I mean, Born on the 4th of July would be clearly my number one. But I just had to have this other film because of I don't know, maybe it resonated with me in a way. And Andrew already mentioned it. It's the movie that it's called Magnolia. He plays a character by the name of Frank T.J. Mackey, where he's a motivational speaker, where he kind of helps men who have like issues of like shyness and they're they're sexually not active. They're very sad and awkward and whatnot when it comes to women and stuff. And so what he does is he goes around and does these seminars and he talks to men and he says, you are worth it. You are a good person. You can go up to these women and talk to them. You can be confident in your life and you can be confident in relationships and whatnot. You don't have to be a nerd. You don't have to be a dork. You don't have to be a geek or whatever. And you have something that you can offer to women and to society and so forth. And then he goes into this interview with this woman, and she starts kind of breaking him down little by little by little. And we start to discover in his character that all of this is just a disguise, that this is just a giant disguise for his own personal he's not like inadequate. He thinks of himself as being very inadequate, but it's because of the interview that makes him like break down and start thinking about the questions from this woman that's interviewing him, and how she's tearing him apart bit by bit by bit, and we start to see him unravel in front of us on the screen. Like Andrew said, this is a film directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. We have people like Philip Seymour Hoffman, William H. Macy, Julianne Moore. I mean, John C. Reilly is in this film. But I feel like the real kind of main storyline in this film that really resonated with me is this Tom Cruise character. And you never see Tom Cruise in a role like this. You haven't seen him in a role like this since, where he was basically like naked in a way. Naked being a symbolism where he's putting it all out there on the screen. What you see from him on the screen is what you're getting from him, from the dialogue and from the questions the woman's asking him and the thing. And you have never seen him do this before or after this. So I think this is the most personal role that I think Tom Cruise himself can probably relate to in a way, about his career, about his life, about his relationships and so forth. And for me, seeing him put himself out there like this, put everything about himself out there in this character of Frank T.J. Mackey it's just a phenomenal. It's just such a phenomenal character. And you've seen a lot of actors do this, but up till that point, you hadn't seen Tom Cruise do it. And since then, you've never seen Tom Cruise do that again. So that's why it's such a phenomenal performance, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people in my place that would be doing the show would consider this one of his best performances. So ever since I saw that, and ever since I've been doing this, I've done a previous iteration of Top 5, not Top 5 Weekly. You know, I used to do a show called the Profiles After Show. We did Tom Cruise, and I had Magnolia as my number one then, and I have Magnolia as my number one now because it just resonates with me and how effective it shows Tom Cruise and his performance and his whole life and his whole persona at that point in his life. And that's why I love that film so much. And I'm not a big fan of Paul Thomas Anderson films. I like a few of them. This one I really, really, really enjoyed, and his performance in it I really enjoyed. All right, so that being said, Steven, you got any honorable mentions?
Yeah, I'll name 3 just so, because there's a lot of them that we could put on our honorable mentions, but I'll leave some for you guys. 3 that stand out to me. One, The Last Samurai, which I think is just a very fierce performance by him once again. You know, some people don't like my friend Julian on Film Club Movie Show does not like this movie because of the historical inaccuracies, but that doesn't bother me. I don't care. It's still pretty badass movie, and I totally believable to me. Tom Cruise was very believable in the movie. Another one is Minority Report, which is another one of the movies he did with Steven Spielberg. I think it's a very underrated sci-fi film that does not get enough credit. I don't know why people don't talk about this movie more. It's based on a Philip K. Dick story. Also, you know, like Total Recall, same author, the same book it's based on. And then another one, which is not really his movie, but his character in the movie is so great. And that is his character from Tropic Thunder, Lex Grossman, is it's just the craziest character he's ever played, in my opinion. And the other thing is that he's very reminiscent of a person I've met in real life. He used to be my manager at a movie theater. Literally, it looks like they copied exactly everything about my ex-manager at a movie theater, and it's really uncanny. It would freak you out if you knew my ex-manager, and then you saw that movie and you're like they look exactly alike and they act exactly the same. This is crazy, but it's hilarious performance. You can go F yourself in your face.
Yeah, I mean that is clearly the best part of that movie, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of the movie as a whole. I know I'm one of the minority in that, but I did like Tom Cruise in that film, and he's almost unrecognizable. He doesn't even look like anything that Tom Cruise looks like as the character of Les Grossman. You're absolutely right. And Minority Report, yeah, if I did a top 10 list, definitely Minority Report would be on there. Andrew, you got some?
Yeah, I have a couple here. I'll just run them off. Early in his career, you can't help but mention Risky Business and Top Gun, two films that kind of put him on the map. I mean, Steven already mentioned kind of his Mission Impossible stuff, but yeah, I highly recommend 1, 3, 4, and 5. I mean, it's kind of a shocking how the films have actually gotten better as they've gone along. That doesn't really happen in a franchise very often. But yeah, Last Samurai I think is super underrated. And for those of you who haven't seen Last Samurai, Tom Cruise is not the last samurai. Ken Watanabe is in the movie. He's the last samurai. That seems to be a huge misconception about that movie because they put Tom Cruise on the poster.
Well, yeah, and also samurai is not singular; it's plural.
True.
So,
yes,
it's like when you say Jedi. Jedi is a group; it's not one person.
Yeah, and it didn't help that they put him on the cover. Like Tropic Thunder, of course. Minority Report, like Steven said. Also, Vanilla Sky, I think, is an underrated movie. I recently watched that for the first time and was really pleasantly surprised by how deep that movie is. And a movie that's kind of a pleasure for me. Maybe a lot of people don't like it, and I'm going to go with The Color of Money, just because Paul Newman's my favorite actor, and you have Tom Cruise and Paul Newman in a film directed by Martin Scorsese. That's a sequel to The Hustler, which is one of Paul Newman's most well-known films. Yeah, we could go on and on forever. Like I said earlier, we could have done a top 10 list. There's so many movies. Yeah,
he's been acting for 35 years. Yeah, so we could have definitely did a top 10 list. I actually got Ghost Protocol. I think there's a couple scenes in that they did with IMAX cameras. The Burj Khalifa scene where Tom Cruise is hanging off of a building that's like 100-something stories tall. That he really changed his whole career at that point with the Mission Impossible movies. He started doing these movies where he had these stunts that were bigger and bigger and bigger. He had to outdo himself with these movies. And that Ghost Protocol, I saw that on an IMAX screen. I'm like, wow, what an amazing film this is. And he's really got that film franchise back on track with that film. And so I had to put, as an honorable mention, Ghost Protocol. Another film these guys didn't mention that had a bad marketing campaign, but a really fun movie, and a gentleman that just died, Bill Paxton, and Emily Blunt, called Edge of Tomorrow. It's a fun movie. I mean, they're doing a sequel. What's the name of the sequel again?
Live, Die, Repeat, and Repeat.
Yeah. Sequel.
Live, Die, Repeat. That title.
The marketing campaign of this film was not good. It made a lot of money. It just was a fun movie. Tom Cruise isn't associated with comedy that often, but he's really funny. A lot of the characters are funny in this film. He's kind of like a Weasley guy that has to become a hero by the end of the film. It's a fun movie, Edge of Tomorrow. And then I also have I know there was a lot of controversy around this film when it was coming out, and the author did not like the casting of Tom Cruise. But I'll tell you what, I think Tom Cruise is fantastic in Interview with the Vampire as Lestat. You have Brad Pitt in there. You have Kirsten Dunst, Antonio Banderas in there. He is really good. For a role that the author didn't think he was good for, and they had a fight to get him in that movie for that character. I think he's fantastic in Interview with the Vampire. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. I think it's a good movie. It's another one of those movies when you see it on TV. When I see Interview with a Vampire on TV, I watch it. I stop and watch it because it's got Christian Slater in there as well. I enjoy Interview with the Vampire, so that would definitely make my top 10 if I had a top 10 list. But I don't know about you guys, but I enjoy Interview with a Vampire. So all right,
It's
so
okay.
yeah, I mean it's not a bad film. So next week we're gonna do in honor of All Eyes on Me, the Tupac Shakur biopic. We're gonna do musical biopics next week. And so Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Cabzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Cabzilla Productions.
And Steven?
You can also real quick. I won't be here next week, so I have to skip again. I'm sorry, guys, but I'm going on a much needed vacation, and also you can find me on Film Club Central. Watch the Film Club movie show. We're trying to get some other things going. These two guys are probably going to start participating when I finally get it going. We're going to start doing kind of a weekly news show called Lights Camera News on my channel. It'll be like this, Google Hangouts, talking about the week's worth of news. And also this coming week, we're shooting our 50th episode of the Film Club movie show, which is going to be a Jeopardy episode. Me, Carl, and Julian are going to go off against each other in movie trivia. And I just want to say right now, you guys are going down.
If they even watch this show, I don't know if they watch the Top 5 Weekly. So you might be kind of throwing out a challenge to these guys. They're not even going to watch it, for all we know. But maybe you should. Hey guys, watch the Top 5 Weekly Tom Cruise episode.
I'm gonna make another video anyway, calling them out. So.
Oh, okay. And you can find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest, or at From the Fourth Row. I also do a podcast with my other co-host, Vincent LaSpada. I haven't done one in a couple of weeks. Our schedules haven't worked out, but we'll get one hopefully this coming week. Also, if you haven't checked it out, we got a new episode of the 52 must-see movies and why they matter. Steven and I talked about The Graduate. We've got some episodes coming up in the future with Andrew and I, and we got about 6 or 8 episodes previous. So if you like classic movies, you don't know why they are essential movies for everybody to see, well, watch those episodes on this very channel, the Best Damn Movie Show YouTube channel. So for Andrew, Steven, and myself, good night.